Welcome to the amazing world of mysteries and puzzles, a place where time stands still and stories of iron birds continue to live on. We'll tell you about a military plane that made a mysterious emergency landing on a frozen beach, stopping just 6 meters from the sea. Then, we'll delve into the world of cinema to unravel the mystery of the plane from the movie Romancing the Stone. Did it become a restaurant or burn at sunset? And finally, we'll talk about the wreckage of Flight 260, which remains in a secluded canyon after a tragic crash. Are you ready to dive into the untold stories of aviation tragedies? This video showcases crash sites you can visit if you are brave enough. Twisted wreckage of Sólheimasandur. During World War II, American troops stationed their bases in Iceland as part of a broader strategy to secure vital sea routes in the North Atlantic and prevent Germany from gaining a foothold in the region. After the war, these bases were transferred to NATO forces, requiring regular resupply. On the fateful day of November 21, 1973, Douglas DC-3 aircraft was delivering supplies to an American Army base a day before Thanksgiving. During the flight, severe weather struck. The temperature dropped to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, and wind speeds reached 60 miles per hour, causing the engines to freeze and fail due to strong turbulence and fog. The crew, unable to see outside, feared crashing into the mountains. The pilot issued a distress signal. 3 jet aircraft and 2 helicopters were dispatched for assistance, while nearby ships were put on alert. Despite the dire circumstances, the aircraft commander made a decisive move. Instead of allowing the plane to crash into the mountains, he directed it south, intending to land in the Atlantic Ocean. Although risky, this decision offered better survival chances than a catastrophic mountain collision. As the plane emerged from the clouds, the crew witnessed a Thanksgiving miracle. A vast pitch-black beach, perfectly flat and stretching for miles, offering an unexpected glimmer of hope. Seizing the opportunity, they made an emergency landing on the frozen beach of Sólheimasandur. Despite damage sustained by the aircraft, it came to a stop just 6 meters from the sea. Miraculously, no crew members were injured. After the crash, it was discovered that the sudden fuel shortage was caused by punctures in the plane's fuel tanks. Once the crew was rescued and received medical clearance, the US military forces retrieved all valuable items from the wreckage. The damaged aircraft was left at the crash site. According to the Status of Forces Agreement between Iceland and the United States, in the event of an American aircraft crash in Iceland, the US covers 85% of the recovery costs, while Iceland is responsible for the actual removal of the wreckage. However, this could only happen if the landowner filed a claim for wreckage removal, which never occurred. Over time, the crash became a poignant reminder of this dramatic event and a mysterious symbol of triumph over adversity. Today, the aircraft wreckage, amidst the rugged beauty of the Icelandic landscape, attracts thousands of visitors from around the world, adding an unexpected allure to this blessed land of nature. Aviation Relic of Alaska. The next stop on our journey is the remote Aleutian island of Atka off the coast of Alaska. There lies a B-24 bomber, untouched but slightly battered, on a vast picturesque field. The B-24D Liberator military aircraft, resting at the crash site, played a crucial role in the World War II. It participated in the Aleutian campaign against the Imperial Japanese forces from 1942 to 1943, the only battles fought in North America during the war. This aircraft completed at least 18 combat missions before crashing due to bad weather rather than enemy action. In December 1942, Colonel Hart and Brigadier General William E. Lind flew from Adak on a B-24 piloted by Captain John Andrews. The 2 officers wished to conduct personal observation directly from the aircraft. The plane reached Atka Island, circled over the bay, and then planned to return to the Adak base. Upon return, the pilot found his airbase closed due to weather conditions. He notified the tower that he planned to fly to the far end of Atka Island and attempt an emergency landing. The plan was executed. As a result of the rough landing, only 1 person was injured. General Lind suffered a broken collarbone. After the situation unfolded, the crew spent an uncomfortable night on the beach while the staff of the 11th Air Force headquarters wondered about their fate. The men had enough food and managed to build a fire, which is a challenging task on the treeless Aleutian Islands. The survivors were eventually located and picked up by the US Navy, cold and tired, but otherwise unharmed. Their aircraft still stands at the crash site to this day. It has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places since 1979. On Boulders in Arizona. Other military aviators on the same type of aircraft were less fortunate. Not far from Humphreys Peak, the highest point in Arizona, you can still find hidden remnants of a plane crash. The catastrophe claimed the lives of 8 people. The aluminum parts of the aircraft serve as a kind of monument to the tragedy. On the night of September 25, 1944, a B-24 Liberator bomber of the US Army Corps crashed into a field of boulders. History states that the weather during this training flight was very cloudy. The crew misjudged their location in the air, finding themselves 15 miles north of the air route they were supposed to follow. The plane crashed directly into the peak, which is about 11,300 feet high. Everyone on board perished in the crash. The remote crash site, located high up in an almost inaccessible part of the slope, remained as it was when the tragedy occurred. Adventurers seeking the unique and hidden memorial of this incident can easily find this location. According to some reports, on the rocky field, you can discover engine parts, structural debris, and even nearly intact wings. On a sunny day, from the parking lot at the beginning of the Humphreys Peak Trail, you can see glimmers of sunlight reflecting off the wreckage. In the 1950s, the US Park Service decided to detonate the remaining parts of the aircraft, scattering them across the mountain. This was due to the increasing number of travelers wanting to see the glint of the crashed Iron Bird in the late afternoon sun on the western slope of Mount Humphreys. Tourists wishing to find the wreckage should do so at their own risk. Clearly, finding them is not easy, and crossing the boulder field can be dangerous. However, those who manage to do so will gain access to one of the most remote memorials in the country. In the Jungles of Curaçao. But the first item on every daring explorer's list should be discovering the wreckage of a plane hidden in tropical wilderness. Just like in the movie Romancing the Stone, where the heroes stumble upon the wreckage of a plane slowly decaying under the forces of nature. Such a plane awaits its moment on the Caribbean island of Curaçao. About a half-hour drive south of the capital Willemstad, at the foot of the southern mountains, lie the remains of the Air Aruba P-4YSA plane. Venturing inside, you'll find that all the seats have disappeared, but the doors and traces of the airline are still there. On the overhead panels, old reading lights and call buttons for the flight attendant are visible. On the floor, among the discarded emergency oxygen masks, seat row number signs are scattered. Examining the fuselage wreckage, it seems as if the plane crashed into the tropical jungles decades ago, and all signs of passengers' presence have simply vanished. Carefully making your way through the exposed fuselage frames to the cockpit, now inhabited by wasps and the pink flowers of the jungle, you see that much of the equipment is still in place. Altimeters, air pressure dials, countless electrical switches, and fuel pump gauges remain as the pilot left them. The front windshield is shattered, allowing grapevines and palm leaves to grow inside the wrecked cabin. AMC YS-11 aircraft have a rather doomed history overall. Out of 182 originally built in Japan, over 20 aircraft were involved in fuselage-damaging accidents, resulting in the deaths of over 260 people. The history of these planes is full of forced landings and takes off beyond the runway. Currently, the former Air Aruba plane is gradually turning into ruins as the tropical forest grows around it. But that's not all about it. There's a completely different story about this airliner. They say this plane never crashed. After its flying days, it was sold to a carrier, and for a while, it served as a restaurant. It burned down not so long ago. Another movie can be made. Documentary or fiction, it's not for me to decide. Anyway, if any of you have been there or will make it to this place, write in the comments whom to believe. Torn wreckage of a bomber. Now, our journey takes us to the Alps of Upper Provence in southern France. Here lie the crumbling remnants of a downed Royal Air Force bomber. The Wellington aircraft crashed in May 1944 while on a bombing mission against a German munitions factory where it was hit by anti-aircraft fire. Severely damaged, the plane could not make it back to its base. As fate would have it, the shot-down bomber was flying over a secret parachute drop zone near the quaint town of Sólheimasandur. This location was intended for the delivery of supplies by Allied forces, which were then discreetly distributed by the French resistance. Purely by chance, the resistance activated control lights for the upcoming parachute drop with supplies, mistaking them for an emergency landing strip. The Wellington crew attempted to land. Unfortunately, the plane crashed, claiming the lives of all on board. All crew members perished in the crash. French resistance fighters rushed to the scene, but it was too late. They extinguished the flames and recovered the deceased crew members, providing them with burials. After the war, these heroes were reburied in the official military cemetery. Today, visitors to the town of Sólheimasandur can pay their respects at a special memorial. It is dedicated to the brave resistance fighters and includes a special tribute to the crew of the Wellington. A fragment of the plane's wreckage, along with the names of its pilot and crew members, serves as a poignant reminder of that fateful night. Wreckage of TWA Flight 260. And now I will tell you about the most numerous tragedy from my video. In a secluded canyon hidden in the Sandia Peak, not far from New Mexico, there is a sign and wreckage in memory of the crash of Trans World Airlines Flight 260 in 1955. At 7:05 a.m. on February 19th, the flight departed from Albuquerque Airport. There were 13 passengers and a standard crew of 3 on board. It was a Martin 404 Skyliner aircraft, a popular twin-engine type with a nose wheel at that time. According to the flight plan, it was supposed to fly to Santa Fe. The flight was regular, the aircraft was checked, and the captain had thousands of flight hours. The weather that morning was unusually cloudy. Heavy clouds with rain and snow covered the sky to the north. Strong winds raged on the ground. The lower foothills to the east were visible, but not the Sandia Mountains. The fly altitude was significantly lower than the high ridge of the Sandia Mountains. Since visibility was zero, the flight had to be conducted instrument only. The pilots could hardly see anything through the windows. 7 minutes after takeoff, Air Traffic Control contacted Flight 260 to confirm their location. There was no response. By that time, the pilots sharply tilted their Skyliner and raised the nose to crash into the rocky peak of the mountain. A few minutes later, a message about the delay of the flight to Santa Fe was received. Massive searches immediately began, followed by years of investigation. 55 years later, the persistence of a handful of skeptics finally provided answers to many aspects of the aircraft crash. Initially, the crash report was all wrong. The liner pilots were even accused of deliberately committing suicide and taking passengers with them. But a reinvestigation absolved the crew of blame. The crash was attributed to a known design problem with the main equipment on board this aircraft and other aircraft of that time. The National Transportation Safety Board cited the cause of the crash as a failure of the navigation instruments. Although the victims' bodies were recovered, most of the mechanical wreckage remains at the site, as well as a plaque detailing the crash, the names, and hometowns of the victims. The crash site is located in a narrow canyon not far from the mountain summit. In conclusion, it is worth noting that few things can capture the world's attention like an aviation disaster. The news of a plane crash makes headlines that grip the entire world. It's a real-life scenario that evokes a nightmarish horror. These aviation disasters often result in a significant number of fatalities. The survival of those on board is rare, and crash sites often become memorials or sacred places, serving as a tribute to the deceased. The world is full of mysterious places where airplane wreckage with stories that make you think still lies. And I suggest you friends consider the opportunity to join our team. If you have video editing skills, can voice videos in Russian, English, and other languages, or write interesting scripts, we will be happy to work with you. Write to our Telegram bot, link in the description.